So let me give you my message this morning that God's laid on my heart. I've been thinking about this idea of starting to create some space in my life. As I've turned 44 years, I'll be 45 this year in May. I'm going to tell you right now, I have learned the hard way that if you don't create space in your life, it will not be there. I have learned, as probably most of you have, that if you don't put something on the calendar, it probably ain't going to happen. Anybody can testify to that. If you don't put it on the calendar, it probably won't happen. And so what you need is something called margin, all right? You need some margin in your life. And let me give you the definition of margin. Here's margin. Margin is the edge or border of something. So you need some margin in your life. You need some space around the edges where you can just breathe a little bit. There's a reason books have spaces around the edges. In fact, we're working on one for Dad right now, and if you're doing the software, it's called Bleeding Slug, okay? If you need some bleeding slug in your life, that's really what it's called. Anybody want some bleeding slug in their life? You don't, not a bleeding slug, bleed and slug. But really what that is setting the, the idea is the margin, the space around the edges, because nobody wants to read a book where there's no spaces around the edges. It will bug you. In fact, let me show you what it looks like. That's no margin right there. Let me just read it to you. Margin is the edge of the edge. I made that up. It's pretty good. The edge of the edge. You can't even see all of these words. We don't like to see no margin when we read a book or write a letter or in Microsoft Word. Margin exists to keep the text from going over the edge. Does this bother anybody? There's no margin, all right? And let me just tell you, in your life, some of you right now have no margin. You know how I know? Because you don't know if you're coming or going. You can't remember if you had to stop and pick up groceries on the way home, after work, before work, if you're going to get the kid from soccer first and then go get groceries. And after groceries, you got refrigerated stuff, so that's a whole issue. You forgot to pack the ice chest. Hey, there were days in our life we put an ice chest with ice in it or an ice pack in the car before we left that morning because we're going to pick up groceries and make 17 stops before we made it home. Anybody live that life? That's called no margin, all right? And so there's a story in the Bible that I think really exudes this point. It really makes this point. And it's a story about Joseph. Now, I'll give you the backstory super quick. Joseph was sold into slavery. He shared a dream with his brothers, who were the 12 tribes of Israel, by the way, sold him into slavery. And then a guy named Potiphar bought Joseph. And so Joseph became his slave. And so Joseph began to work with him. But listen, Joseph... he really began to show some attributes, show some things to Potiphar that made him realize that this guy's got something. So we're going to pick up the story there. So Potiphar gave Joseph complete administrative abilities over everything he owned with Joseph there. He didn't worry about anything. I love, this is my life right here, except what kind of food to eat. Now, I can get behind that right there. That's a life I would love. Can you imagine if you just woke up every day and I got no worries except what I'm going to eat today? I kind of live that life now, to be honest with you, but I feel bad about it. He only had to worry about if he was going to have a breakfast burrito, a steak taco for lunch, and some sort of Mexican for dinner. Like that's all he worried about. Can you imagine that life of wondering what you're going to eat? That's all you got to worry about? I'm telling y'all right now, I'm already planning breakfast for tomorrow right now. I ain't even had lunch yet. I do, man. I think about that stuff. It's important. You got to get that margin in your life. But here's a guy, he's talking about margin. Do you think his life got margin? All of a sudden, the owner of all this property, all his responsibilities, he put the right guy in charge, and now all he's worried about is what kind of food to eat. That's the kind of margin I want in my life. So here's what happened with Joseph. Look what happens. The Bible says Joseph was very handsome and a well-built young man. He looked a little bit like me. Well, I'm well-built. I'm sturdy, okay? Another word, the Greek word there is, Hebrew word is sturdy, okay? I'm very sturdy. Weeble wobbles fall, but they won't fall down. That's where I'm at. He was a very well-built young man. So he was a looker is what I'm trying to tell you. This dude was GQ model. And Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. So I want you to see that word began. Like it started somewhere, all right? So now Joseph has a response to make because she's saying, come sleep with me. And she demanded it. And so this is the boss's wife, and so you can't tell her no, but he's trying to. He's trying to fight it off. But Joseph refused. Look, he told her, and let me just say real quick, he said something to her, and sometimes talk ain't enough. Sometimes you got to do more than just talk. Sometimes you got to do more. Sometimes you just got to run, all right? You got to flee. I wasn't uppercut, all right? I'm talking about if I had my other mic, I could have did both on run. So he's talking, but that ain't enough. He said, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. Watch this. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held nothing back from me except you. Watch this. I'm going to tell you right now, when you don't have margin in your life, the one thing that you shouldn't have is the one thing the devil's going to offer you. He says, he's giving me everything except you. And she's like, well, let's do something about that. He said, because you're his wife, how could I do such a wicked thing? Watch this. It would be a great sin. Watch this. Not against Potiphar, not against her, but against God. Isn't that interesting? He's starting to set some boundaries in his life. And watch this. Here's what I want you to see. Here's where he actually put the margin into place. Like we talk about margin, but he actually did it. Watch what he did. Watch this. She kept putting pressure on Joseph day after day. She didn't stop, but he refused to sleep with her, and he kept out of her way as much as possible. That's called margin. What was he doing? Running. He stayed out of her way as much as possible. Now, some of y'all are doing this at work with some people just because you don't like them, all right? But I'm talking about, you ever did that? You ever? Because look, man, I'm a people person most of the time, but there are days when I go to Walmart and I see somebody's vehicle that I might know or might not know, and I'm trying not to find those people. Anybody? And some days I'm like, where they at, dude? Where they at? I got time today. I can go talk to them. I feel like a people person today. And some days I'm just like, oh, they saw me. I know they saw me. I know they saw me. Let me hit the express checkout real quick and get out of here as fast as I can. Because you can be in, even the small Walmart, you can be in there with 3 people you know and never see them if you do it just right, okay? Believe me, you can do that. I promise you. But he was keeping out of her way as much as possible. Here's what I want you to see. He was not avoiding her because he didn't want to be with her. He wasn't avoiding her because it wasn't a good offer. He was avoiding her because his root was in the right place. His root was because it was a sin against God. And 2 weeks ago, not last week, 2 weeks ago, we talked about how the root of your fruit is what matters. You may be a loving person, but is it the love of Jesus or is it your love? You may be a forgiving person, but it's because that's the way you were taught. It's because it's the forgiveness of Jesus. So here's what I want you to see. When you have margin in your life, it matters where it starts, okay? It matters where it starts. Margin is most effective when it's made for the master. Don't just create margin to create margin. Don't just create space to create space. Create space because the Lord is calling you to something quiet. The Lord is calling you to something pure. Y'all getting that this morning? It's most effective when it's made for the master. His root was not because he didn't want it. His root was not because he might feel guilty. His root because it was a sin against God. So margin is so powerful. It generates some things in our life, and I want to share 5 things with you. So if you're taking notes this morning, let me just say, since you're taking notes, all right? Since you're taking notes, with each one of these points, just leave a little space underneath each one because I want to give you the how in just a few minutes. So with point 1, I got 5 of them, all right? So get ready. If you're taking notes, you're going to love this. 5 points. All right, so leave a little space below each point because I'm going to give you the how in just a second. Here's the first thing that margin generates. Margin generates purity. We just saw that. When you have space in your life, it will generate purity in your life. But it ain't going to happen by accident. We're talking, the bumper talks about the mind. You're going to have to make up your mind. You're going to have to do it on purpose. It generates purity. When you have margin in your life, you're not going to go to the sites you shouldn't go to. When you have margin in your life, you're not going to go to the places you shouldn't go to. When you have margin in your life, you're not going to keep sending that text to that person that's starting to get a little bit too serious. Margin generates purity. Here's the second thing. Margin generates generosity. When you have margin in your budget, all of a sudden you can go help some people. All of a sudden, when God calls you to pay for that hamburger behind you at McDonald's, it ain't that much of pressure. It's just like, you know what? I have it in my budget now. I have $20 to give to somebody this week or this month. When you have margin, it actually generates generosity. Here's number 3. Let me give you real quick. Margin generates excellence. When you have time to work on something, it just gets better. Are y'all getting that? When you got time to work on it, it just gets better. You can just do better things with it. I know for us here at WRC, we try to plan as best we can. I mean, we plan as much as we can, but sometimes stuff just gets thrown together. And I'm going to tell you, when we have something planned, it's just better than it is if we just throw it together the night before. The same is true in your life. When you have margin in life, you can actually have some excellence. In fact, you can stop and thinking about what you really want it to be or what you want it to look like. So it actually generates excellence. Margin generates grace. So I'm going to explain this one to you because you might not quite get it out the gate. Margin generates grace because when you have time in your life, marginal time, so if you leave your house 15 minutes earlier than you should have, now all of a sudden the dude at the red light that's taking too long to go when it turns green, you're not as mad at them. You got a little more grace. Why? Because you got a little time. You created margin by leaving a little bit early. Some of y'all looking at y'all already hitting each other on the side. Say, you need to leave a little earlier. Some of y'all angry drivers because you're waking up late. I was right here at this red light right here, and I was turning left, and I was probably hitting Burger King or something. Burger King got it going on, y'all. I don't know if y'all know that, but Burger King got it happening. But I don't know where I was going. I was probably chasing food somewhere. In fact, let me just tell you this. When I get up in the morning, my phone hooks to my Wi-Fi, my Bluetooth in my truck. It says Wendy's is 4.5 minutes away. I am not kidding. Ticks me off, man. It thinks I go to Wendy's, I'm coming to the church. I'm just going to work. So I'm in the turning lane, I'm turning left, and I'm just like, this car, like, there's two cars in front of me, and look, y'all, you talking about putt-putt. I'm talking about putt-putt. Like, I might not, I'm only 3 cars deep, I might not make the green light. That's how slow they're going. And I'm just like, what are you doing? And they get up, and they start, and I couldn't see who it was, and when they turned, it was a little black car, and on the side it said, student driver. I said out loud, take your time, little buddy. Take your time, little buddy. So when I have time and I'm not in a crazy rush to get somewhere and I got time, I can actually have a little grace in my life. Does that make sense? Margin generates grace. Man, when you can actually take your time and really focus on loving people instead of I'm going to be late, it matters, it matters, it matters. It actually generates grace. Here's the next thing it generates, and that is peace. When you start setting up some boundaries with some people in your life, you start setting up some margin with some people, it'll actually generate more peace. And so I'm going to show you how that works. So if you're going to have margin, in your life, it's going to take something that we haven't talked about yet, and that is boundaries. All right. In fact, today's message, the title is Setting Boundaries. You cannot have margin without a boundary. In fact, let me give you the definition of boundary. Boundary is something that indicates or fixes a limit. You have boundaries at your house. There's a line where you stop mowing. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? And their grass might get to be 10 feet. I have a neighbor that got destroyed by the storm, and for a long time, nobody even cut it or anything. So it was just like, snakes and scorpions were coming out of their grass. I never really saw a scorpion, but I'm pretty sure they were in there. But I stopped mowing. I had picked up all my stuff. The trees were out of my yard. The limbs were out. I can't put my mower in the yard at that time because I didn't know what I was going to run over. But I have a boundary. There's a line. There's a boundary around your property where your property stops and someone else's starts. And so it's something that fixes a line. It fixes a limit. So if we're going to do that, we're going to have margin. If we have margin, we're going to have boundaries. Let me just tell you, without boundaries, margins are meaningless. You cannot have margin without boundaries. You cannot have margin without boundaries. Can't do it. You have to start setting some boundaries around your life. And you can talk about it all you want to. You can say you have boundaries. You can say you have a budget for your finances. Look, I'm a killer budget maker. It's hard to follow one. I can't hardly follow one, but I can make you one right now. We'll sit down after church. I'll make you a budget. Ain't going to be that easy to follow. See, we can talk about it. But if you have a boundary you're setting up and then you're not following that boundary, it's not really a boundary. It's just an idea or a thought. And so without boundaries, margins really are meaningless. You have to have boundaries. So let me tell you, so here's the gaps you're going to fill in here. So I told you that it creates purity. So let me tell you, if you're going to have purity in your life, you got to set a boundary. Here's where you got to set it at. If you're going to have purity in your life, you got to set a boundary around your weaknesses. You got to set a boundary around your weaknesses. It could be a filter on your phone. It could be avoiding that restaurant if your weakness is food, like me. Have you ever passed a restaurant and you're not even hungry and you just pulled in? Because it was 6 o'clock. It's time to eat. I did it 2 days ago. I know. Not even hungry. I'm going to have to put some stuff in my. I'm going to have to put some shields in my. It's going to be dangerous to drive, but at least I won't see the Burger King. I love me some Burger King, man. You're going to have to set some boundaries on your weaknesses. You're going to have to set some boundaries with that person that's maybe going too far with the conversation. Well, I have to work with them. Yeah, but you don't have to flirt with them. I just did, Stuart. That was. Listen, we can talk about it all you want to, but you have to set some boundaries. Here's the best boundary. If you want purity in your life, here, I'm going to give it to you right here. Here's the key to having purity in your life from now on. Here it is right here. Fall in love with Jesus. See, if you're just trying not to cheat because your wife might get mad, and then she's mad at you anyway one day, you're just like, well. See, that can't be the reason. See, when Joseph didn't sin, the boundary that he set was not because he might make somebody mad or he might make somebody upset. It's because it would be a sin against the holy God. That's why he set the boundary. I'm preaching better than y'all. Listen, is the hub getting this? Let me hear y'all in the hub. I want to hear somebody. Listen, y'all. Listen. Y'all, God, listen, I say, y'all, we have to set some boundaries. If you want purity, you have to set boundaries in your life. In fact, the Bible tells us about what that looks like. In Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23, guard your heart above all else. Watch this. Before it determines the course of your life. Guard your heart. So when you set this boundary, let me just tell you real quick, just a real quick little, this won't cost, this is extra, but it won't cost you anything extra. Here it is right here. You set a fence up around whatever it is that you don't want yourself going past, whether it's a website or a person or a phone number. I've had somebody call me one time and say, look, man, I got this connection with this person. Yes, I'm married, but I really feel this connection. What do? I said, delete her number now. That's what I told them. Wanted me to say, you know what? It'd probably be okay. Boundaries. So here's what you do. You set up your boundary, but you got to have a gate on that boundary. Here's the gate. The gate lets the bad out and the good in. All right? It lets the bad thoughts out, lets the good thoughts in. You got to have a gate. But listen, the bad thing is we open that gate up to let something bad out and something bad tries to get in. You got to have some boundaries in your life, and when you have those boundaries, you guard in your heart because it determines the course of your life. Here's the second thing. If you want to have some boundaries in your life, if you want to have generosity in your life, set some boundaries around your finances. Set some around your weaknesses for purity. Set some boundaries around your finances if you want to have a margin, and if you want to set that margin, set that boundary around your to have some generosity. You got to set boundaries around your finances. What does that look like? It's a 5-letter word, but it's really a 4-letter word. Is it 6 letters? 6 letters. Budget. All right? I know, y'all. It's early in the year, so I'm getting it out. You got to have a budget. You got, and look, you may blow it in one area, but listen, over here in our budget, we have set for giving money. We have money set to give to the church and to the ministries and help other people. And I'm just going to tell you, when I know it's in my budget, see, the idea that we have with this boundaries is that we think that it's closing us in. Listen, boundaries brings freedom. I'm going to give you an example. If you had a playground right out here, let's say there was a playground right out here in this little grassy area right next to this road right here where we took your kids on Sunday morning to let them go play. How would that make you feel? All right. We ain't doing it. I'm just saying, what if we did? And we let them play out here. And I'm going to tell you right now, every worker out there would be a nervous wreck that had their running shoes on ready to go catch a kid before we ran out on the street. So you couldn't even relax. But now put a fence around that same area. Guess what? You just created freedom for them to run around within the fence. Y'all getting that? So when you set boundaries, you're actually bringing yourself freedom. You're actually setting limits to go, I can go this far and no further. So build a budget. In fact, the Bible tells us how we should live our life, and this is what it looks like. Luke 6:30, give to anyone who asks. When the things that are taken away from you, don't try to get them back. Well, how can you have that attitude? You have a budget. You're financially okay. You're watching your finances. You can't have this attitude and be a wreck financially. Give to anyone who asks. You know how crazy that sounds? But when you have an attitude of gratitude and your budget is okay and you have money set aside to go help somebody, you can do that. So I'm going to tell you, if you're going to have a generosity about your life, if you're going to set margins, then you have to set a budget. You have to set a budget. Here's the next one I want to show you, and that's excellence. Set boundaries around your expectations. One of our 4 core values here is pursue excellence. And that's why we try to plan things. We try to do things. That's why when you come in here, you know, everything's set a certain way. We have water in the breezeway. We have coffee. We had an excellent breakfast this morning. Are the Matherns in the house? Or they might be in the hub. Well, the breakfast good this morning. If y'all came and ate, man, it was good. So if you don't know, we have a 5th Sunday serve where we have teams that don't even schedule anybody. People just show up and eat breakfast and go jump on a team somewhere. It's awesome. But listen, that was an excellent breakfast. Croissants, Better than Burger King croissants. Way better. Man, when a guy named Hot Sauce, just Charlie's nickname's Hot Sauce. There's a reason for it. I do. He'll light you up. It is so good. But it's excellent. When we have a dream team party here and coming up in April, we're going to do as excellent as we can. So when we have things, we're trying to pursue excellence because Jesus did that. In fact, Philippians tells us if we're going to focus on some things, here's what they should look like. Fix your thoughts on what is true, honorable, right, and pure, and lovely, and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. In other words, do it well. Think about it well. If you're going to do it, when you think about doing it well. And so think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Here's the last one I want to give you, and that is grace. I'm sorry, I got two more. Grace is the second to last one. Set your boundaries around your schedule. If you want to have real grace in your life, you're going to have to start setting some schedules. Because I'm telling you, a life without schedule is a graceless life because you are running from one place to the next. And here's the thing, when I'm that busy, I don't see people. When I'm that busy, I do not see people. I'm running from here to there, and you're just in my way. Some of y'all might feel that here on Sunday morning a little bit. I'm sorry if I do that. If I'm talking to you and I got 3 other people standing around trying to get my attention, or I thought about 7 things I forgot to do and it's 9:25, I'm sorry about that. But when I get here early and get it all done, all of a sudden we can do that. We can have time to hang out. So that's great. It actually brings grace when you set boundaries around your schedule. Here's what the Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 3, verse 27. Do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it's in your power to help them. Look at verse 38. If you can help your neighbor now, don't say I'll come back tomorrow. Don't say come back tomorrow and I'll help you out. Help them now. Why? Because you have set that boundary in your life. Let me get to the last one this morning. I want to give you this one. I want to spend just a couple minutes here because it's so important, because everybody here needs peace. Everybody needs all of these. But if you want peace, you got to set boundaries around your relationships. This one's going to sting a little bit. I saved it for last so you didn't get up and leave, okay? This one's going to hurt, all right? You got to set some boundaries. Other people's problems are not your problems. All right? You ever see something on social media and get just fired up about it? And you barely know A and you don't even know B person. And you are fired up that somebody like that would say something like that to somebody else. And I can't believe I wasn't there to protect them. Well, what just happened? You got offended about something that didn't even happen to you. You know what that means? You can't give or receive forgiveness for that. You're stuck. Your offense never goes away. There's nothing you can do about it. When somebody else comes up with an issue and they want to bring you in on the issue, set boundaries around your relationships. The Bible talks about burdens. Galatians chapter 6, verse 2 through 5. Share each other's burdens in ways that obey the law of Christ. If you think you are too important to help someone, you're only fooling yourself. You are not that important. I didn't say it, he did. So he talks about burdens, and the idea of that burden is a boulder. It says share each other's burdens. That's the boulders that are just too big to bear. It's a loss of a loved one. It's a loss of a job in a timely situation. It's a financial burden that you just really need some help with. It's a situation with a family that really they just need to reach out, and you just want to, those people that are going through something, you just want to reach out. You don't even know what to do. Just send them a card or send them a text. Help them out. That's the kind of idea of that burden. Then he mentions another burden. Then he goes in the next verse. Look at the next verse in verse 5. For each one should carry their own load. So, well, what does that mean? You got one burden over here and a load over here. Well, this burden is a boulder that they can't carry by themselves. That's why we have life groups. It's where ministry happens. Y'all happy about life group happening right now, man? Life group is kicking. Our group is, we're pumped up about life group. It's so exciting. If you are not in a group, find a group. We have about 23 for you to choose from Sulphur to Lake Charles to Ragley, all over the place. So check them out. But listen, this is about carrying a day-to-day burden. These are burdens you carry on your own. These are your emotional problems right here. I cannot help you with your emotional problems. I heard about a counselor that had a couple said, hey, can you counsel us about our son? He's into drugs, alcohol, he's just running crazy. We don't know what to do. Can we come in and talk? And he said, yeah, come on. So they come in, and the husband and wife show up. He's like, where's your son at? This is a true story. And they said, well, he didn't think he should be here today. And he said, well, I don't think he has a problem, but go ahead. So and they just kind of looked at him and they shared the issue and the problem that, they pour money into him. They help him do this. He doesn't really have a job, but all he does is smoke and drink and hang out and party all the time. And he says, listen, here's the deal. Your son doesn't have a problem, you do. He has no issues. He has no problems. He can sleep in late. He can get what he wants. He don't have to go get a job. He said he don't have an issue, you do. So there are some burdens that you need to carry on your own. There are some burdens that people need to be able to carry on their own. You can't keep helping them out of the jam over and over and over and over and over. If somebody comes here more than twice for money, I'm like, hey, let's look at your budget. Come on in here. Let's talk about what you bring in and what you send out. If you're paying $200 for DirecTV, we got to talk about that. You can't pay your car note, but you can pay more for DirecTV than I pay for. We got to talk about that. Well, because what we're doing is we're taking on there, but we're just helping them. We're just taking. Well, it becomes our problem too. So I'm gonna help you. Here's what I'm gonna help you with. So this load here, this is a daily burden that you should bear. That's your responsibility, nobody else's. Now, it's funny that it's opposite. You have the people that want everybody in to help them, and they never do it for themselves. And then you have the people that won't tell anybody anything. But this burden here is something that you need to carry every day. The idea is a day-to-day burden that you need to carry. So I'm gonna give you some help. If that's you, if you're helping other people all the time and their issues become your issues, let me just give you a little help here. Here's what I want you to see this morning. No is a complete sentence. Now, I'm saying that now. Wait till Parker's old enough to start asking, let's rewind that message and talk about the no word. Grandkids don't count. All right. So here's what that looks like. No. That is a complete sentence. Did you know that? It's a one-word complete sentence. No. Here's what I found. When I tell people no, I can't make that because of something's come up on the schedule, I always thought I would upset them or make them mad. I found out that they actually respect me for saying up front that I can't help them. Instead of me trying to help, I can't pursue excellence when I'm trying to help you and do 1,000 other things. I really can't get it done the way you want it done anyway. So let's just save both of us a headache and you go find somebody else. I'm going to tell you, we get to a place in our life like this, and we all do it. And you don't have boundaries. You don't have a margin in your life with relationships because you're always helping that person. Always, always, always. And you're always there, and they never have to feel any pain. I don't like it when people that I love feel pain. I really don't. And I've overstepped some boundaries in my life. But when it becomes a lifestyle, you're not helping them or yourself. So here's what I want you to do. Don't let others make their problems your problems. Don't let them make their problems your problems. And it happens all the time. Well, I just love them so much. They're my second cousin's third wife, fourth removed. I just thought they might need some help. And if the Lord leads you by, I'm not saying don't be gracious. I'm not saying don't be giving. I told you a while ago, if you want to be generous and set some boundaries around your budget, I'm not saying just say no all the time. I am saying there are moments in your life, no is better than a yes. Because you're letting them make their problems your problems. And they have day-to-day burdens that they should be carrying that you're trying to carry for them. Here's the last thing I want to leave you with. If you don't set your boundaries, someone else will. If you don't set your boundaries in your life, somebody will set them for you. And y'all are all nodding your head because you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your boss is setting your boundaries right now. You got family members setting boundaries for you right now. Listen, y'all, if we want to be effective as life group leaders and church members and members of society and employees and employers, we have to set boundaries. You have to have margin in your life. It's the only way you're going to have grace. It's the only way you're going to have peace. It's the only way you're going to be generous. We have to set some boundaries. Build that budget. Start saying no. Talk to somebody. Get some help. But listen, don't let them make their problems your problems. Because if you don't set that boundary, they're going to do it. They're going to do it. And maybe you're here this morning, you're going through something. You need some help. Like you have a real heavy burden, and you feel like you're all by yourself. We want to pray with you and pray for you. We're changing our prayer model just during COVID being such a high spike, so we're not going to have a team down front. We're wrapping up 21 days of prayer today, so tomorrow we start 21 day our prayer group back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. in the hub. Don't miss it. It's a powerful, powerful time. And we want to pray with you, pray for you. But if you need prayer specifically, text the word prayer to this word, just the word prayer to this number right here, and we'd love to pray with you. It'll send you a form, fill it out, and we will pray for you on tomorrow night. But pray for yourself. Sometimes I've started asking people, they go, hey, will you pray for me? Well, have you prayed for yourself? And you're surprised how many times people go, well, I just hadn't really thought about that. You have Jesus in you just like I do. Pray about it. See what God will lead you to do and take those steps. But I'm telling you right now, if you don't start setting some boundaries, you're not going to have the time to pray. You're not going to have time to do anything that's important. Set some boundaries in your life. And maybe you are carrying something that you're trying to carry by yourself that's not yours to bear by yourself. We want to pray with you. So let us do that for you.